Mas, hein, quem ainda não leu, já pode muito bem ter visto, porque das páginas o seu sucesso transbordou para as telas. Fez uma sucessão no cinema.
Do you have any experience of caregiving?
I've never done it, but I'm sure I could learn. Good morning. Oh, he hates me. Every time I speak, he looks at me like I'm stupid.
To be fair, you are pretty stupid.
Yeah, but he doesn't know that yet.
No, stay. Tell me something good.
I have become a whole new person because of you.
Podem aplaudir. Nesses tempos em que texto de meia lauda, meia dúzia de linhas já são rechaçadas como textão, ela bota a garotada para devorar livros de mais de 300 páginas, aqui e no mundo todo. Já escreveu 12 romances, vendeu mais de 29 milhões de livros. Só no Brasil, vendeu mais de 2 milhões. A sua literatura é lacrimogênea. Porém, e aqui eu cito a crítica Lisla Schillinger, do New York Times, provoca lágrimas redentoras, o contrário de gratuitas. Então agora, é com nossa melhor alegria, o nosso melhor sorriso, que a gente dá as boas-vindas a Jojo Moyes. Bem-vinda ao Brasil, Pauline Sarah Jo Moyes.
I don't hear that very often.
É um apelido de infância, Jojo, ou você escolheu esse nome para ser conhecido no mundo?
Oh my goodness. It's a long story, but my mum had to christen me very quickly when I was a baby because I was very sick. And they gave me this long name. And then there was a Beatles song at the time called Get Back Jojo. And that became my nickname from when I was this big. And it's never gone.
Então, os Beatles têm parte da autoria do seu nome.
The Beatles were responsible, yeah.
Quando você era jornalista, você já se assinava Jojo?
I did, but my first ever job in a regional newspaper, the editor said I sounded like something from a bordello. So he refused to let me use my name. So I became Josephine briefly, which is not my name, and I've never been since. And after that, I insisted that I just be Jojo.
Eu acompanho o seu olhar de jornalista ainda presente no seu Twitter. E queria saber, a vitória de Macron na França te trouxe algum alívio depois do Brexit? Você diz que o Brexit foi um roubo.
It's a huge relief because I think Marine Le Pen was part of the politics of division. And I think now of all times we need the politics of inclusion. And it worries me that this kind of division is being encouraged in society, and I think we have a long fight to reduce that in Europe, but I'm hoping that Macron is the better choice.
O período como correspondente em Hong Kong, você ficou um ano, ajudou a formar a romancista Jojo?
I think when you move to a different country, it gives you a wider perspective. If you come from England or Britain, you believe that your country is very important, and then when you move to Hong Kong or maybe come to Brazil, you see that we're this teeny tiny, opinionated, noisy, slightly irrelevant country. And I think moving to a different country helps you see a different perspective. You see that not everybody sees the way the British do, that there are different ways of living. You have to learn a different language, eat different food. It's good for you, I think. Everybody should live abroad for a little while.
Ajudou a enriquecer, né, te dar repertório para fazer a sua obra. Mas eu sei que o fato de ter se tornado mãe foi determinante para você pegar um novo rumo na sua carreira, sair do jornalismo para a literatura.
Absolutely. Anybody who's worked in news journalism knows that it's very hard to look after a baby and also maintain a news career because news is impossible to predict, and babies need stability. So from the time I had my first child, I knew that my time in journalism was probably numbered, and I started writing books. I have to say, if I'd known that I would write 3 books before I got one published, I might not have tried quite so hard. I might have picked a different career, but yeah, that was what I wanted to do.
Não, você foi mais persistente do que isso, porque você escreveu Na verdade, 8 livros até acontecer. Você insistiu por teimosia ou por autoconfiança?
I think it depends who you speak to. I probably am quite stubborn. My husband would probably say stubborn. I love telling stories, you know, and every book that you write, you have the hope that this is going to be the one that speaks to people. I have a friend who's a writer who says that the business of publishing is like being paid to be disappointed once a year. And this is what I felt my career was, that I would put my heart and soul into a book, I'd get some good reviews, put it out there, and everyone would go, you know, so what? And I got quite anxious that maybe I just didn't write those kind of books. And so finally, I wrote Me Before You, and my husband used to joke that that was going to be the book that killed my career completely because of the subject matter, because it was controversial. But I wrote it without a publishing contract, and that gave me a very particular kind of freedom because I just wrote the book that I wanted to write. And the rest is history. Something astonishing happened.
História mesmo, com H maiúsculo. O título em inglês, Me Before You, tem um duplo sentido que se perde em português. Eu não sei se é importante, que é eu antes de você e eu diante de você. Isso se perde. Quer dizer, é um processo de um aprendizado entre Lou e Will, né?
Yeah, and the Portuguese title is probably a more accurate representation of the book. But in England, when we first put this book out, the publishers were a little nervous because if you describe that book in the wrong way, if you say, it's about a man in a wheelchair who wants to die, who's going to read that book? I wouldn't read that book, and I wrote it, you know. So we had to make a title that was very opaque, you know. If you look on the cover tells you nothing about what's inside the book, because the publishers felt that if you just read the story, you would enjoy it, but we had to just not tell you anything. Yeah.
Pelo que eu entendi, então, os livros anteriores, você estava tentando atender às supostas demandas de mercado, dos editores. Quando você se livrou disso, escreveu o que você queria, funcionou. Como é que você escreve? Você escreve à mão primeiro, direto no computador? Eu vi uma foto sua com uma máquina de escrever, uma foto muito bonita.
Oh, I love old typewriters. Yeah, if I had my way, I would have one in every room. I handwrite before I start writing the book, so I focus most on characters. So a couple of months before I start writing, I buy a big book. It has to be black. It has to have a black pen, no lines. We're very specific writers. And I write a history for every one of the main characters. So I want to know what they like for breakfast, where they grew up, what is in their fridge, what is in their handbag, what's the worst thing that ever happened to them. And I have a thing called the kick the dog test. I don't kick the dog. But if my character walked down the street and saw somebody kicking a dog, what would they do? And these little tests are quite good revealers of character. So would they go and snatch the dog away? Would they argue with the person kicking the dog? Are they confrontational? Or would they kick the dog? Are they a psychopath, you know? And these little tests can tell you a lot, so that by the time you actually come to write the book, you already know who the character is.
Cada personagem você já conhece intimamente. Você chutaria o cachorro?
Yeah. No.
O delay da tradução.
I would punch the person. Yeah.
Como é que veio essa história para você? É uma história muito intensa, tem que ter uma certa coragem de enfrentar esse tema. Por que você sentiu essa necessidade? O que aconteceu?
Well, it was a story that was very close to my own family at the time. We had 2 people in our family who required 24-hour care just to stay alive. They couldn't feed themselves, they couldn't go to the toilet, they spent their whole time in bed, different parts of our family. And if you have a situation in your family where somebody is chronically ill, it is very hard to persuade them that there is pleasure in life, that there is dignity in suffering. And I felt very strongly that we, as a society, we have advanced our medical technology to keep people alive where they might not be alive 20 years ago, but we have nothing to offer them. It's very hard to convey that quality of life. So every day I would talk to my father, you know, about this member of the family and say, do you think we should do this? Do you think we should do that? And it's very hard to believe that sometimes somebody being alive is the right thing if you witness them suffering day after day and there is no hope of redemption. And then one day I was driving home and I heard a story on the news about a young athlete, a young man who had had an accident while playing rugby, and he'd been left quadriplegic. He couldn't move from the neck down. And he, several years after this accident, had taken the decision to end his life at a centre for assisted suicide. And his parents had agreed to take him. And I was so shocked. This story wouldn't leave my head. I was horrified by it. I wanted to condemn the mother, especially. You know, we all condemn the mothers. I couldn't understand how you would do that. And then, because I'm an ex-journalist, I wanted to read more about it. And the more I read, the more I realized that things are not always black and white, you know, that this was a very complex story, that this man had a very determined character, and then the writer part of me took over. I wanted to know, what would it feel like to be that man? What would it feel like to be his mother? What would it be like if you fell in love with him and wanted to change his mind?
Você mencionou centro para suicídio assistido onde? No Reino Unido mesmo?
No, Switzerland.
Switzerland. Na
I
Suíça.
think there are a few others. There are a few in America now also.
Porque aqui no Brasil, por exemplo, é proibido da cadeia e, ao mesmo tempo, a reação ao seu livro foi uma recepção muito simpática. Em algum lugar do mundo você teve uma reação contrária ao desenlace do livro?
I think, firstly, the thing that was surprising to me was I expected, especially in a country with religion at its heart, that people would hate the book. I did. I thought it would be a small audience in England. But as the book's popularity spread across the world to strange places like Korea and, you know, Italy, very religious country, what I realized was that the book is very careful not to say this is a good thing to do or this is a bad. I try to pass no judgment. What I'm asking people to do is look at the situation through the eyes of different people who are involved in it and ask yourself, what would you do? Because real life is not simple. It's not always answerable by easy statements. And so I think that's why even in countries like this, people haven't necessarily, I don't know, I don't think they've condemned it. But I think also, you know, the film, we had some publicity in England that was against it, but I think a film is a very different thing because a book can be nuanced, you know. There is a lot more room to explore the argument, to explore different representations of people's points of view, and I think in a film it's a little more condensed. It's harder to introduce the different shades.
No ano passado, como a Jojo acabou de dizer, Como Eu Era Antes de Você virou filme, foi igualmente, assim como foi um best-seller o livro, foi um blockbuster, foi dirigido por Thea Sharrock, que é uma respeitadíssima diretora de teatro. Vamos ver um pedacinho?
Will, this is Louisa Clark.
I'm Lou.
Will. William. William, please.
Hello, Louisa Clark. I'm Will Traynor.
Em geral, quando se adapta uma história de um livro para um filme, o adaptador tem que ter um certo desapego brutal ao livro. E, em geral, dá briga entre o adaptador e o autor. Você resolveu brigar com você mesma?
Yeah, I was very surprised when they asked me to write the screenplay. MGM asked me after I signed the deal, because I'd never written a screenplay. I wasn't very interested in that kind of thing. But I think they felt that the balance in the book was a very delicate thing between humour and tragedy, between the more controversial elements and maybe the humorous elements. And I think they felt that they wanted to retain the voice of the book in the film. And I loved it. I absolutely loved being part of it. I would like to be cool about it, but I was totally uncool. It was the most fun I've ever had, and I'm, you know, an old lady. It was great.
Então, provavelmente, você vai escrever outros roteiros. Gostou da brincadeira?
I've gone on to adapt, I think, 4 other books now. Yeah.
E o que você aprendeu? Como você acha que a escrita para cinema vai influenciar a sua literatura?
My husband says I wang on a lot less. I think I waffle on. Because in a film script, every word has to count. You have a much shorter time period, and everything you say has to either contribute to the plot or the character. And now I guess when I'm writing a book, I'm asking myself slightly harder questions. Is this interesting? Is this scene really necessary? So I hope it's been good for both sides.
Está ficando mais autoexigente. Quando nós falávamos, você estava explicando que a maneira de não fazer um juízo de valor sobre a história, no caso, e mostrar as razões de todos, eu me lembrei de uma frase da crítica do New York Times, acho que foi um dos dois, Guardian ou New York Times, que fala que você pega o leitor com a naturalidade da sua voz. E isso é meio caminho para o cinema, né?
I think that was her way of saying I don't write very literary fiction. My books are easy to read. You know, I think that comes from journalism. When I started out in journalism, I was told that if the reader doesn't want to read beyond the first paragraph, it's your fault. You've made it too complicated or it's not interesting. And so I think my method of writing is almost journalistic. I just want to tell the story. It's probably a little unsentimental or unflowery because of that. But that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the story. I want to hook people and pull them along. And for me, that's the way to do it.
Então você já respondeu uma pergunta que eu estava pensando em lhe fazer,
Okay,
que é sobre as duas funções da linguagem, segundo alguns teóricos, que é a linguagem serve para comunicação e expressão. Então, para você, em primeiro lugar, comunicar. Depois, isso vem como um meio de expressão pessoal também?
Absolutely. I think I love to tell stories. I think, you know, from childhood, all I wanted to do was write stories, draw stories. You know, I drew comic strips. For me, this is how I see the world. And in fact, when my books weren't selling very well and it looked like for a while I might have to take up another career, I remember being on a bus in London and I looked out of the window and there was a policeman on a horse, a mounted policeman. And I looked out the window and I thought, well, I could be a mounted policewoman. And then I thought, oh, I could write a really good book about being a mounted policewoman. And then I realized I was doomed because this is how I make sense of the world. I write it. And if nobody ever buys my books again, you will find me still writing stories and just putting them out on the internet because that's what people do now.
Mas possivelmente aí você já vai ter feito um pé de meia, né? Para poder escrever por prazer. A história, quando você começa a escrever a história, ela se impõe para você? Tem algum momento que você perde as rédeas e os personagens vão dizendo o que vai acontecer? Ou você mantém o controle?
It's like having children. Everyone is different and you never know how it's going to turn out. I always start with a rough idea of the plot. I know who my characters are. I have a vague idea of where the big, you know, climactic points are going to be. And then halfway through, some character comes to the front and goes, I'm taking charge. And you have to, you know, it's like steering a car on a wet road. You're just trying to keep control of the whole thing. But that's what's fun, you know. You get to be queen of a domain and you never know quite what's going to pop up from day to day.
Então você tem os 3 filhos aqui na vida real e quando vai escrever tem uma porção de outros filhos que são muito rebeldes, né? E por que escrever depois de você, a sequência? Foi uma imposição do mercado ou uma vontade sua pessoal?
It was a bit of both. When I wrote the first one, I had no intentions of writing another one. And then I wrote that book at an age when the internet really took off in terms of social media. So suddenly Twitter became a big part of my life and Facebook. And also I set up a website with a contact button. And people started to talk to me about Louisa, especially. You know, they were emailing me and tweeting me and saying, well, what happens to her? I want to know what happened to her afterwards. And because I then started work on the film, the same question was in my head, and I started to wonder, well, what would happen to her? And what was interesting for me was that I felt that everybody felt she got a happy ending, that she goes to Paris and life is great. But every time I thought about it, I thought, you wouldn't escape that situation and just bounce away from it. It's a huge thing she went through, and it was a terrible thing. And I thought that would hit her, and I became more and more interested in how she would sink and how she would rebuild her life through grief. And so that became the focus of the story.
Mesmo porque a negação é apenas a primeira fase do luto, né? Depois,
Yeah.
E a Lu, no segundo livro, ela começa a frequentar um grupo de terapia do luto. Você chegou a frequentar grupos assim para viver algo semelhante?
I haven't done group therapy, but I've done lots of group sort of sessions of things. I have done individual therapy, so it became a kind of... I used experiences from both of those. And actually the group therapy thing came in quite late because the book, when I started writing it, became really sad. And I hadn't intended it to be that sad, but it's interesting because if you really inhabit your characters, sometimes you can't always control how they are. And I felt as I was writing, well, she's not going to bounce back. You know, she loved this man so deeply. And really, I introduced that to try and introduce some humour, because otherwise I felt that, you know, everyone's going to go home after reading this book and go like, oh, God. And also, I just love it when you have disparate groups of people together, people who don't understand each other, forced together through circumstances, always something funny happens.
É mais ou menos o que você faz mesmo como escritora nos seus livros,
Yeah,
né?
yeah.
Você tem algum problema com o rótulo de literatura feminina?
I have to be careful what I say. I keep getting myself into trouble.
Cuidado com o Twitter, hein?
You know, I think it's a shame to put labels on any kind of literature. You know, as a reader, I like everything. I like, in the same way that I like all kinds of music, I like my boys' comic books, I like Lee Child, I like Game of Thrones, I like high literature, I like Jane Eyre. You know, you name it, I will read across it because I'm indiscriminate. If it's good, if it's interesting, then I'm going to read it. And as soon as you start putting labels on, you tell a whole section of readers, this book isn't for you. And I've learned things from books that were very definitely not aimed at me. I've learned from them, I've laughed at them or cried at them. And I also think, you know, the feminist head of me says that we do tend to like to put women in a box. And I'm just going to quietly bust out of my books.
Elas têm a mania de sair dessas caixas, não tem jeito.
Yeah, I kick my books.
Desde sempre, é.
I don't kick the dog, I kick the books. Yeah.
Boa. Essa é a sua primeira visita ao Brasil. Você já pode narrar as suas primeiras impressões desse país tropical?
Oh my God, I love it so much. I got in late at night on Sunday, and because of jet lag, I woke up at 4:45 on the Monday, and I thought, I need to go back to sleep. It's a big day. And I opened the curtains and I just went,
Onde?
I can't go to sleep. This is too exciting. I was on Ipanema Beach. It was beautiful. And I guess, you know, if you live in the UK, all you see of Rio, all you see of Brazil is mining and carnivals. You know, this is what we know of. And maybe black beans. We don't see a lot. And I've come here and there's such an amazing vibe and people are quite chilled and the cities are beautiful and it's just interesting. So on day one, I was texting my husband saying, you need to book us to come back out here when I'm not working because you need to see this. So I'm afraid I'm coming back already.
No ano passado, a Jojo Moyes foi a autora mais vendida aqui no Brasil. Quase sempre tinha 3 ou 4 títulos na lista dos mais vendidos. E continua na lista esse ano também. E saiba, Jojo, é uma façanha porque o Brasil é um país de poucos leitores. Os brasileiros leem pouco.
Really?
Leem pouco, é. Você tem alguma... É cedo para te perguntar uma interpretação para... Nesse país de tão poucos leitores, você virou um fenômeno.
Oh, I think across the world, kids are reading less because there's so many other distractions. You know, I have to get my boys away from this thing all the time. But my experience of Brazilian readers has been very positive because the first I understood of Brazilian readers was through Twitter. And I kept thinking, who are these people who keep tweeting me with the word beijos? I don't know this word. So my friend is married to somebody who lives in Argentina, and I said, what is beijos? And she said, kisses. I'm like, this doesn't happen in England. Yeah, my experience has been very passionate.
Bom, mas o brasileiro lê menos, por exemplo, que os hermanos argentinos, que os uruguaios, chilenos, venezuelanos. Mas hoje a nossa plateia aqui está repleta de fãs da Jojo. Levanta o braço quem ama a Jojo aí. E uma delas, em especial, trabalha sério para incentivar a leitura no Brasil. Você vai conhecê-la logo depois do intervalo. tenho orgulho dessa banda. Rafaela Fustagamo, assim que fala o seu nome? Fustagamo. A Rafaela mantém o blog A Menina que Comprava Livros. Ela trabalha pela causa da leitura no Brasil. Qual é a melhor maneira de formar leitores, a seu ver?
A gente está tão acostumado, né? Uma nova geração que, igual o Jojo falou, que fica só online, que reunir em livrarias e conhecer outras pessoas é a melhor forma.
É engraçado que fala assim, não, os jovens não estão lendo porque ficam online. Mas na internet o que se faz é ler e escrever. Tudo bem, não é literatura, mas é um exercício com as palavras.
Mas acho que aí tem dois grupos, né, Biel? Porque tem o grupo que tem preguiça, igual você falou, de textão. E tem as pessoas que gostam muito de ler e que não conhecem outras pessoas, por exemplo, no trabalho, ou na faculdade, ou na escola, que gostam de ler tanto quanto você. E é por isso também que eu fiz o blog, porque eu queria ver outras pessoas, conhecer outras pessoas, e eu passei a fazer os eventos também para passar, tipo, como se fosse uma palavra, né? Tipo, é a palavra da Jojo, tipo, eu quero que todo mundo leia e tenha, e conheça o livro. Então, a gente começa a fazer evento para demonstrar esse amor para outras pessoas.
Que paixão, né? O que te pegou porque você é uma leitora variada, eclética. O que a Jojo te fisgou, assim?
Olha, o primeiro livro que eu li dela, eu estava voltando, eu tenho muito medo de avião, e eu estava voltando num voo de Atlanta que tinha, no total, com a conexão, dava 13 horas. E aí a minha tia falou, esse livro aqui tá super na moda, que eu peguei aquele paperback e me enfiei dentro do voo.
Qual era o livro?
Como Eu Era Antes de Você. Uhum. E eu chorava tanto, que a moça que estava do meu lado falou, querida, ele não chora por homem assim, não. Eu falei, mas ele morreu. Aí ela, ele morreu, meus sentimentos. Eu falei, tá. Eu nem falei que era o personagem. E aquilo me tocou tanto. E daqui a pouco, quando eu vi, o piloto estava falando que estava chegando no Rio de Janeiro. Então, eu nem vi o tempo passar. Então, acho que um dos motivos maiores de eu gostar da Jojo é que ela me ajudou muito com o meu medo de avião.
Então, isso é o que mais te atrai da literatura dela?
Não. Depois eu descobri outros livros, né? Eu li os anteriores, não tinham no Brasil, então eu comecei a ler no Kindle. Li em inglês e eu descobri que tinham 9 livros antes. Então, para mim, foi uma surpresa muito grande. Eu me apaixonei por O Som do Amor, por exemplo, que é uma história fantástica. A Isabel é uma personagem forte. Eu gosto muito das personagens da Jojo, porque as pessoas falam assim, mas é só sofrência. Não é, não. Elas são fortes, elas não precisam de homem para viver. Isso é muito legal. Não.
Mas isso significa que há um caráter feminista nos livros?
Talvez ela não perceba quando ela escreve, mas tem sim um empoderamento muito grande. Não sei se ela percebe isso, você nota que quando você escreve...
No, it's very important to me.
Os seus protagonistas, suas protagonistas, elas têm uma força dentro dela que elas não dependem de mais ninguém. A força está dentro dela. E isso é uma coisa que eu identifiquei de cara, assim, com o seu personagem.
Não é um feminismo involuntário.
Thank you. No, but I think, just because you write a love story doesn't mean that you can't show that a woman's life is complete however she chooses to live it. What's important is for her to understand what makes her happy, what makes her feel fulfilled. If she has a man, that's fantastic. If she has a woman, that's fantastic. But most importantly, you have to be comfortable in yourself, in your life choices. And what I try not to do in my books is to say, if you get this handsome prince, if you get this designer handbag, if you get the nice shoes, this is going to make your life better, because it doesn't. But I just wanted to add one thing to what you said about reading and being online. And I, last year, found that I hardly read any books because I was too busy. And then I thought, what is this? This is what I do for a living, and I'm saying that I'm too busy to write books. And yet, every night before I went to bed, I was doing online Scrabble, I was checking Facebook, I was going on Twitter. And so I sat down and I read a book one Sunday from start to finish. I sat down and I felt like I'd had a holiday. It's like you de-stress, you enter another world. I think I'm sure if a doctor had come along, my heartbeat would have slowed down, my stress levels would have disappeared, and I thought, this is why we do it. It gives us a break from our own head, and it gives us a break from our lives, whereas if you are online, all you're doing is feeding yourself little bursts of, is it dopamine? They've done tests on it. You refresh, refresh, you go from one thing to another. It doesn't do your mind any good. It just teaches you to be anxious that you're missing something somewhere else, and maybe someone's replied to me, maybe someone's liked my Instagram post. It's not actually taking you out of yourself, and I think we need to relearn the art of concentrating just on one thing, because not because it's good for us, but because it's really good for us. Yeah.
Eu concordo. Acho que a Jojo tem razão, ela tem um ponto, como se fala em inglês, porque é uma questão de ritmo cerebral mesmo, que entra num outro ritmo, a atenção da gente. Você quer fazer uma pergunta, Rafaela, para a Jojo?
Na verdade, eu queria saber, ontem não deu tempo, eu fui na livraria, mas foi muito rápido. Eu queria saber se ela tinha um pouco da noção de como as pessoas amam ela aqui. Eu sei que pelo Twitter você sabe, mas quando você vem no Brasil, você vê o calor das pessoas, a gente é diferente, a gente abraça, a gente toca, né? Brasileiro é diferente, né? Você falou, veio da Inglaterra. Se você percebeu como as pessoas tremiam na sua frente, eu vi isso. Eu também estava tremendo por dentro. Então, eu queria saber como é que foi essa sensação.
You know, last night at the book signing in Sarajevo in Rio de Janeiro, I think I got kissed more times than I've been in 20 years of marriage.
Eu entendo.
I was like, I have to not be English now because everyone is going to hug you, you know, everyone is going to kiss you. And it was lovely, you know, it was just, yeah, it's very unusual because in England, if you do a bookstore signing, people shuffle up to you like that. And they go, I quite like that one. Oh, thanks. You go away. Here it's like, big hug. It was, yeah, I came away, I was giddy. Yeah, my husband has a lot to catch up on. I said to him this morning, either...
Traz ele para o Brasil.
He's coming. But I said to him, either I'm going to go home with a case of strep throat or a new husband, and I'm not sure which one it is yet.
Alguém quer fazer uma pergunta, além da Rafaela?
Oi, Jojo, tudo bem? Bem-vindo ao Brasil. Eu queria saber dos próximos projetos, assim, você já está escrevendo algum livro novo? Eu sei que saiu um agora que ainda não foi traduzido, enfim, eu queria saber dos próximos projetos que eu vou querer todos.
I've just finished the third book in the Me Before You series. It's The Adventures of Louisa Clark in New York. And I'm not going to tell you anything more about that, but hopefully that will be out next year. I'm also working on a couple of film projects. I've written scripts for Paris for One, and we're hoping we might film this year, but, you know, it's Hollywood, so you never know. And also the script for 1+1. So there's a lot going on. There's always a lot going on. I'm always writing. That's the one thing you can be sure of.
Jojo, eu vou te ensinar uma coisa sobre beijo no Brasil, tá? A gente fala beijinho, que quer dizer pequeno beijo, e no Rio de Janeiro fazem assim, dão 2 beijos assim.
Right.
E em São Paulo é um só. Muito obrigado, Jojo. Pode ser o outro também. Muito obrigado, Jojo. Uma alegria.